Hey, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, SPC-209, whatever time you're consuming this little artifact of academic media. I am once again Vic McInnes, your interpersonal communications instructor, coming to you live on video from the partly cloudy campus of Aiken Technical College, located here, as we all know, in the heart of the booming Graniteville, South Carolina metro area. Hey, remember, Aiken Technical College, your number one choice for higher education in Aiken County. Hey, I accidentally brought my keys into class, so the jingling you're gonna hear is me putting my keys down. Hey, today we're moving on to chapter 14. Two left, one more lecture. We're combining 15 and 16 into one lecture. So this is your penultimate lecture on chapter 14, leadership. And again, this is coffee. It is definitely not gin. All right, so today we're talking about leadership. The first thing we need to discuss is the difference. Oh, wrong marker. Wrong marker. All right, we need to discuss the difference between a leader and leadership. Okay? A leader is a group role and has status conferred upon it. Okay? Leader is someone in the group. They are a person in the group that has a high status conferred upon them. Can be formal, can be informal, can be, hey, you are the group leader. It could just be someone that everyone looks to for leadership. Okay? And we're going to talk about how all that happens as we go today. Leadership, though, is a function. Leadership is a function of communication, behaviors, influence, within the context of moving a group to the completion of a task. Okay? Remember we talked about last time how small groups have to have a common purpose. If there's no common purpose, there is no need to have the group. The group does not, either never forms, or once the task is accomplished, the group begins to disintegrate. Okay? The leader uses his leadership or her leadership with the functions of communication and behavior and influence to move the group to the accomplishment of that task, or tasks, plural. Okay? So remember, leader is a person, a position, a status. Leadership is the functions, how the leader conducts the functions through influence, communication, and their behaviors. A lot of times we expect leaders to model behaviors to show us how to accomplish a task. Okay? So, let's start talking about the very, very first thing we need to know. How do we choose leaders? How does someone become a leader so they can execute leadership? Well, the simplest way is appointment by an external authority. And again, and that can take a whole lot of different forms, but remember we talked about when we form small groups, one of the ways that a small group forms is that the group is brought together by an external authority. Almost always when that happens, the external authority will appoint a leader. If it doesn't, well, we'll talk about how that works in just a minute. Okay, in the military, it's very easy that even if the group is not brought together formally, an external authority, by virtue of your rank, will appoint the leader. Okay? And it's always funny when you see a bunch of military guys get together that are going to be a small group and nobody's been formally appointed as the leader. When they get together for a working group, you can see, I would used to love to just sort of sit back and watch them sort of scope each other out and try to figure out who was the boss. Okay? And it gave me great joy when some of these guys had sat there for 10 minutes before the meeting trying to figure out who was going to be in charge, and I got to stand up and say, hey, General so-and-so has appointed me the leader of this working group, and they would all just go, oh. Okay? So sometimes an external authority is going to appoint the leader, right? But other times they are going to emerge because of traits. Okay? They will emerge because of certain traits they have. The first one that we have to acknowledge is attractiveness. We tend to give people that meet the general cultural definition of attractive more leadership roles. Okay? Don't believe this. Go back and research and see in how many presidential elections, especially in the last 100 years, have been won by the tallest candidate. Okay? Happens over and over and over again. The tallest candidate almost always wins in a presidential election. You know, we can poo-poo it, but it happens way too often. It's this huge statistical anomaly, so there has to be some motivation behind it. Okay? Inevitably, when you watch small groups, the tallest member of the group, oftentimes, unless they intentionally remove themselves, will oftentimes step up to be the leader. In this culture, we give power to people who are physically imposing or tall. All right, the second reason, the trait that can have an impact, is communication. Communication. Leaders are fluent. And that doesn't mean they speak a lot of language. It means they speak their language well. And fluency implies confidence. Okay? And with confidence comes leadership. All right, I'll tell you a story. An FBI agent I worked with one time. He was a bomb expert. He had been called up to, before 9/11, there was an attempt to blow up one of the World Trade Center towers. And so he was in D.C., got the call, got up to the World Trade Center about 24 hours after the blast. And when he walked up, he looked at everybody and said, hey, listen, where's the command center? And they said, it's in that building across the street. And he said he was looking around and he saw, because the New Jersey State Police had an office there, even though it wasn't in New Jersey. New Jersey State Police was there. Port Authority was there. New York Bureau of Prisons had officers there. The City of New York had officers there. State of New York had officers. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, drug enforcement, any federal law enforcement or state or local law enforcement agency that had a building had an office in the World Trade Center, which was 31 different law enforcement agencies, had people there and were trying to take control. Okay? So he said he walked into the command center and he said it was absolute bedlam. People were yelling at each other, and he said, and looked over at one of the guys from he didn't say what law enforcement agency, he just said, hey, who's in charge? Guy went, I got no idea. So he said it took him about 2 seconds to make the decision. And he just walked up to the front of the room, yelled as loud as he can for everybody to shut up and sit down. And nobody sat down, but people did shut up. And they all sort of looked at him and he said, my name, I'm not going to mention his name, my name is Special Agent, and he gave his name. I have been sent here from FBI headquarters, and I am now in charge of this investigation. Everybody have a seat. And I'm going like, and I looked at him when he told it, and he was talking to a small group in a symposium on leadership and law enforcement. And I just looked at him and said, that's a pretty ballsy move. I mean, that takes nerve. And he goes, somebody had to do it. And we all went, well, what happened next? And he said, they all looked at me, stared at me for a good 5 seconds, at which point I thought my career was ending, and then they all sat down. And he just was like, and he said, the first thing I did was I looked at a captain from the New York Police Department, and I said, I want you to get people to go secure that site and no more evidence comes. And he started giving orders. He was fluent. So people assumed he was confident. So people believed that he had authority to do what he was doing. I asked him, did you have any sort of paperwork? He said, no, nobody in D.C. knew I was doing it. But somebody had to, so I did. And people inferred on me because I acted with alacrity and with confidence. People assumed I was in charge. And they gave him an esteemed position of leader, and he began to execute leadership. Okay? But when the situation has to drive and pick the leader, it usually happens in two stages. We'll call this situational selection. When situational selection takes over, first stage, a number of candidates are eliminated. A number of candidates are eliminated either immediately or very quickly. All right? And you've seen this before when a small group gets together. You'll have 8 people and 3 of them are talking and really engaging. And the other 5 people are going like, I could care. I have no idea what we're talking about. I was just told to come over here and I was supposed to be in this room at 10 o'clock. That person is out. And it boils down to the two or three people that are engaging. So step number 1, a large portion of the group is immediately eliminated. Second stage is a leadership struggle. Now, and we don't mean necessarily physically coming to blows and beating each other up. Okay? It can be a rhetorical or a communication struggle. Oftentimes, it will be head-to-head, and you will have 2 primary candidates, and they will have to resolve their differences until someone can become the head. Oftentimes, you're going to have to build a coalition. You're going to have to build a coalition. Okay? In other words, there's going to be a vote. And there's 8 people in the group. I'm going to have 4 people vote for me. So you start making deals with those 4 people in order. And sometimes the deal is, listen, I understand what you want, and I want to get through this as quickly as possible. So let's focus. If I'm the leader, I'm getting through this as quickly as we can, and I'm not going to go tracking. This guy clearly is going to go off in every different direction. I'm going to get it done. Okay, you can be the leader. Okay? The contesting for leadership can be very subtle. It's not always 2 people staring at each other going, I want to be the in charge. No, I want to. A lot of times it's like, sure, you can be in charge. He doesn't know what he's doing. And it can be very quiet. But the thing you have to remember, there can be residual impacts. Okay? If you build a coalition and the vote is 4-3, you got half your group that really isn't happy that you're in charge. And there could be some hard feelings that could hang around. Okay? And then finally, the second place finisher is still important. Just because you are formally appointed the leader of the group, the person who finished second in the election is still going to be incredibly important. They still will have influence within the group. You can't just say, haha, I've won. Now all of you obey me. That's not how small groups work. All right? So the struggle may be head-to-head. It could be 3 different. Eventually, it's going to become head-to-head, although that means more one-on-one, because even if you have a people trying for a leadership position, in almost every instance, one of those three is going to be eliminated before the final decision is made. It rarely, if ever, comes down to a three-way struggle. Okay, small groups just don't work that way. A larger group, yeah, it may be, but in a small group, which remember is 12 or fewer people, it's just going to get too complex. There could be a period of coalition building. Sometimes the struggle is very subtle. There are residual impacts to a leadership struggle. Those who supported the loser are may still have hard feelings. And that loser, the second place finisher, is still going to wield a lot of influence. And you say, he lost. Okay. Well, if that second place finisher was not going to have influence with his coalition or her coalition, then there wouldn't have been a leadership struggle. It would have just been one person moving forward as the leader. If there is a real leadership struggle, there always has to be a second place finisher with influence. And sometimes that influence is very good. I mean, hey, Bob, you've won. Congratulations. I fully support you, and all of my guys here are here to do whatever you do. That's influence. Okay? Sometimes it's, all right, guys, he won. Just shut up. Let's let him fail. Then we can take charge. And if we have an opportunity to help him fail, all the better. Okay? All right. Usually, a leader is going to emerge and will win. If there is a struggle, they will emerge and they will succeed because of their communication skills. And these communication skills can take on one of three, or actually usually fall into three areas. First is operational communication. See if I can get to there we go. Operational communication. These are communications that facilitate accomplishing the task assigned to the group. In an informal group, a social group, that's the person who knows how to get evites out to everybody to say when and where we're going to meet. Okay? With people my age, it's the guy that figured out how to use a group text. Seriously, I'm not kidding. Back about 10 years ago, somebody became the leader of a social group I knew because they figured out how to send out group text. You would think that wouldn't be that hard, but I'm old. Okay? The second will be communication skills that fill an administrative function. An administrative function. These are procedural related functions, management and administrative tasks that aren't directly related to getting the task accomplished, but support that. Go back to my social group. These are the guys who call up and say, hey, listen, I've got 10 people that are going to be there for dinner on Friday night. I need a table. Okay? In a business environment, hey, listen, I've got all your time cards taken care of. I'm going to go ahead and file those for you so everybody gets paid. Sorry, there's somebody parking right outside the window who's trying to stick a Chevy pickup truck and a Toyota Corolla spot. Just waiting to see if I have to sign an accident report. Okay, so we've got operational. We've got administrative, and then there is people-focused. People-focused leaders, or people that have a leadership style or accomplish people-focused tasks, are focused on the relationships within the group. Okay, they jammed the pickup truck into the little spot and they immediately backed out and went somewhere else. I don't know what's going on outside. Okay? Once again, we have something going on down in the commons and there's a million people roaming through the parking lot. Okay, so operational, task focused. They communicate well in functions related to accomplishing the task. Administrative communicate very well on procedural and support issues. And then finally, people-focused skills serve a relationship function or focus on relationship functions in order to maintain the relationships within the group. Okay? Now, this is usually the point where a lecture goes into leadership styles. Okay? I want you to Google leadership styles, and you can even stick leadership styles list on there, and you're going to get about 150,000 different websites. All right? There are literally hundreds of books on different leadership styles. I am not going to go over them. Okay? Because no list is comprehensive. I will tell you, the one in the book is pretty good. Okay? Go over that because I have nothing else to add. That list is as good as any. If I went over it, it would just be adding. It would not add anything to it. I would just bring in things from other lists. And to be honest with you, one list is about as good as the other. But I would expect to see something from that section of the book. I don't know, maybe toward the end of the semester. Okay. So let's talk about leadership. As its primary function is the exercise of power. Okay? Now, when you talk about guys like the President of the United States, when you talk about guys like what now is the President was the premier of the Russian Federation of the Soviet Union, you talk about the General Secretary of the People's Republic of China. Power in that instance has real concrete international implications. When you're talking about 12 people working toward a task at work, okay, that power involves assigning tasks. If it's a social group, the power involves, hey, nobody can decide on where we're going to go eat? Fine, we're going to Chili's. And if any of y'all guys work for another restaurant other than Chili's, fine, we're going to the Outback. Fine, no, don't go to the Outback. Just kidding, okay? Although, no, never mind. I'm not going to tell that story. Power is how a leader motivates the group to achieve goals. Power is the way a leader motivates the group to meet goals. Now, there are 5 different types of power. There is what we are going to call legitimate power. Legitimate power. Legitimate power comes from being the leader. It is inherent in the job of leader. Okay? It is how you execute your leadership. So when you become the leader of the group, even if that selection is handled informally, you have legitimate power to execute. Okay? There is expert power. This comes from you being the smartest guy in the room on any given subject. Okay? Oftentimes, because by the time I was finished, I had worked in a very specialized community within the Department of Defense that became incredibly relevant after 9/11. And I would walk into a room and I would be the only person there with any knowledge on that. So my expertise and my expert knowledge made me a leader. When it came down to legal and administrative issues concerning our task, I was usually the smartest guy in the room. So oftentimes I became the leader of the group, not through any particular, big brain I had, just because I had 28 years experience. Okay? There's what we're going to refer to as referent power. Referent power. Oh, let me spell it right. Referent. In referent power, based on your likability, your attractiveness. Okay? What we may euphemistically refer to as charisma. Okay? That's because people like you. Well, now somebody is parked illegally in a fire lane and that glare is coming right in my face. Okay. Yeah, referent power comes from attractiveness, likability, or charisma. There's informational power, not informal, informational. And you've heard it said a million times, information is power. Hey, listen, if I'm the guy that knows the things that's going to help you accomplish your task, or going to help us accomplish the task, and I'm the only guy that's got that information, I have power. This is different from expert power. This is where, hey, listen, I know where we go get this stuff to so that we can accomplish our task. We need lumber. I know where to get cheap lumber or free lumber. Okay? We need paint. I know where to get free paint. We need $1,000 contribution so that we can accomplish our task for this nonprofit. I know who to call. That's informational power. And then finally, there's reward and coercive power. Carrot and stick. Hey, if you do what I want you to do, I'll take care of you. I'll get you that promotion you've been looking for. If you don't do what I want you to, we got that field office in Alaska that needs people working at it. I can take care of that too. Okay? So that's reward with a D. These are the types of power a leader can execute. Okay? Now let's talk about group membership and what the members are going to do. All group members have to have a role in the group. Okay? If a group member does not feel like they have a role, then they will leave the group. Many times the group members will assume a role, whether it's for the productive ends of the group or not. Okay? So as the leader, I may give you a role explicitly. I may fall into a role based on my talents and expertise. Or if you don't give me a role, I may take a role, but that can be productive or it can be counterproductive to the health and the productivity of the group. Okay? There are two ways to get a role. I've already kind of discussed formal or designated. Okay? That's where the leader will go, you're going to be the recorder, take notes. You're going to be the PowerPoint guy, you need to produce all the PowerPoint for our presentations. All right? You're going to be the computer guy, I just need you to get the computers up and running and keep them up and running for the duration. The other way is obviously informal or emergent. A person in the group begins to assume behaviors expected of the group without being given a specific title or without being formally given the role. And now let me include in this both formal and informal. The leader of the group can assume that role based on either of these two models. Formal designation would be either through an election or through an external participant appointing a leader, or over time, an informal leader, a leader may come up through an informal process. Okay? Formal, the person is appointed to the job. Informal or emergent, the person begins to assume the role based on the needs of the group or their personal desire. Okay. There are 3 types of roles. There are task-oriented roles, maintenance roles, and then there are disruptive roles. Task roles, maintenance roles, and disruptive roles. Task roles are those that are explicitly focused on accomplishing the task associated. 100% of what they do focuses on getting the job done. And these would be like the leader. Okay? What we'll call the initiator. The leader, the initiator, the opinion seeker, okay? The secretary. I don't like that word secretary anymore. We're going to call it the recorder. I got to change my notes so I don't ever say secretary again. And then here's one that you don't normally think of. The devil's advocate. Now, a lot of people, upon first thinking of it, we go, wait a minute, hold on a second. The devil's advocate is the person who sits there and goes, hold on a minute. Have you guys thought about what the implications of this is going to be if this fails? A lot of people will see that as a disruptive role. But the devil's advocate in many, many instances is the most important person on your team. Because remember last lecture we talked about groupthink. The devil's advocate is going to be your number one ally in preventing groupthink. Because they're going to be the one going like, hold on, we need to discuss what happens if this fails. Well, it's not, nobody, we don't think it's going to fail. Well, what if it does? What do we do next? Okay? The devil's advocate has a very, very important task role. Now, the next is going to be maintenance roles. These are people that are focused, or roles that are focused on keeping the group cohesion together and moving through that process. Okay? These are going to be the supporter, the harmonizer. Okay, and those two should be fairly obvious. The supporter is the encourager, the person who gives verbal or other support to people. The harmonizer is going to be the person who relieves the tension and builds coalitions in the group. Okay? There's the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper is the person who keeps everybody from talking all the time. When you're in the group, everybody, somebody, it maybe the leader will take this as part of their task function, but somebody's going to have to go, hold on. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Let's focus on our task. Okay? Sometimes when you've got a lot of external input coming into a group, the gatekeeper will, the leader will tell the gatekeeper, hey, listen, go out to all these yahoos that keep sending us emails and tell them just to send emails to you so that we can focus our efforts. And then you screen out all the crap and we can focus on what's important. Gatekeeper can be a very important role. Okay? And then there's one that we're going to call the feeling expressor. The feeling expressor is the one who will verbalize the mood of the group. A lot of people may not say, hey, listen, it's been a long damn day. Can we come back and start again on this tomorrow? Because nobody wants to be the first person to try to back out. That makes you look weak, like you're not committed. Okay? The feeling expresser is the person who goes, hey, we've been at this for 12 hours already. I think it would probably be more productive if we just break now, come back tomorrow at 8 and start in on it again. Hey, listen, this has gone really well. I think everybody needs to give themselves a pat on the back for the great work we've done. That is a very important role. Okay? And again, a lot of these can be dual. Can the leader be the expressor, feelings expressor? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, can the devil's advocate also be the harmonizer? No, that's a little hard. That's a bit of a reach. You can't really say, hey, I think we need to relook this plan and be the guy that gets everybody together all at once. But you can feel, a lot of times, again, even these maintenance roles, listen, I need you to be the person who speaks for the group and has, I know that a lot of people aren't going to want to talk, freely because, especially in the military, I outrank them. They're part of my command. They're not going to want to go up against the boss. Okay. I need you to be the person who speaks all those things, who communicates the doubts and the worries of the group. And as a civilian outside the military chain of command, I could do that. Okay? Now, the disruptive roles are generally not productive roles. They are roles like the stage hog, the person who's trying to get all the credit for everything. There is the isolate. The person who doesn't want to get involved, withdraws from the group. There is the clown. Now, there's nothing wrong if you're the harmonizer for cracking a joke and breaking the tension. But when you're the clown, you are disrupting things. You're involved in horseplay, practical jokes, comic routines that go beyond tension relief. You're doing it to attract attention to yourself. Okay? There is the blocker, who just opposes everything, doesn't like anything at all. Okay? There is the fighter. And this is a person that brings on conflict into the group. Okay? That's involved in bullying. And then there's the cynic, and that's pretty self-explanatory. The cynic can sour a group. Now, as your leadership role, as the leader, you have to deal with the disruptive roles. You have to deal with the clown. You have to, and again, on more than a couple of occasions, I've been the clown in the group thinking I was harmonizing, but I take it a little too far. Okay? The stage hog is someone, and again, all of these, when you get right down to it, all of these disruptive roles are focused not on the group goals, but on their individual desires. Okay? If I'm the stage hog, I don't care. I just want credit. If I'm the isolate, I don't want to be bothered with these people. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to deal with them. I don't want to accomplish this task. I just want to be left alone. If I'm the clown, it's all about having people laughing at me. It's not about having anybody accomplish anything productive. The blocker and the fighter, I could care less what you think. This is not going to work. Why are we even bothering to talk about it? A lot of times, you remember that leadership struggle we talked about? And I said there would be repercussions. A lot of times, that person who finished second in that leadership struggle winds up being your blocker. And they have that coalition of blockers, and they could really impede the progress of your group. Okay, and then the cynic, it's not going to work. Wow, we're not qualified to do this. They've set us up for failure. Okay? Disrupted, task-focused, and maintenance-focused roles are focused on accomplishing the task and finding the right balance in your group. Disruptive roles does have to be dealt with because those people are focused on their individual selves and not on the accomplishment of the goals of the group. Okay? So let's talk about, once you get all this sorted out, sooner or later, your small group is going to have to solve a problem. Now, all problems for small groups have three basic components. Three basic components. There is the need, which is an undesirable situation. Okay? There is a goal, which is the desired end state. And then finally, there is an obstacle. Okay? Now, a lot of times people will say, well, if there is a need, if there is an undesirable situation and we have a goal, we automatically have a problem. You don't have to have an obstacle. Well, if you can move from your need to your goal without an obstacle, you don't have a problem. The reason you formed the small group was because you have an obstacle. Okay? I need to pay my taxes. The goal is to mail my forms to the IRS. The obstacle is putting all that crap together. Okay? The three parts of a problem are your need, or the undesirable state you are currently in, your goal, which is the desirable end state, and there is a problem that is impeding your passage from the goal, from the need to the goal. Okay? Now, problem solution, 5 steps. Step number 1. Define the problem. Okay? A lot of times, step 1 and 2 are skipped. People just want to, let's just fix it. Okay? Step number 2, analyze the problem. Step number 2 is analyze the problem. You have to understand what your problem is, okay, before you can come up with solutions. A lot of times, you're going to have your goal, and your boss is going to tell you, I need you to, we're not doing as well in this area as I want to be doing. You need to get to this goal. The problem or the need and the obstacle are both unknown. I have no idea why we're not meeting our goal. That's why I picked you to lead this team. Okay? So step number 1 is to define the problem, and step number 2 is to analyze the problem. Step number 3 is generate solutions. Okay? Generate solutions. Now, the most common way, and you may have been involved in it, the most common way of generating solutions is through brainstorming, where you get a bunch of people together, You get a whiteboard or you get some paper and you say, hey, throw out the solutions. There's no bad ideas. Let's just throw them all out here. And the first thing that happens is somebody throws out an idea and the leader goes, that's stupid. Don't bring that back up. What has that just told that person? Do not contribute for the remainder of this scenario. I need you to shut up and sit there and don't contribute. And I have seen that happen a million times. Okay? When you're generating solutions, every member of the team has a role to play. The recorder is writing them all down. Okay? All those people, you know, anyway, all of it. Yeah, I'm having a brain freeze. Way too many people distracting me outside. The initiator, the opinion seeker, the information giver, they all have important roles in generating solutions. Okay? Because if we knew what the correct solution was, we wouldn't have a problem. We would have already met our goal. The obstacle would have already been overcome. So as a leader, you don't know who's going to generate that solution. Now, the devil's advocate role in this is to say, hey, listen, you said any solution was fine. Why aren't you writing that one down? We don't know that might not be the solution. Even if it's the weirdest. And I have been in situations where the person who came up with the weirdest, what appeared to be on the surface, the stupidest solution, we were able to take a part of it and apply it. And when we started combining solutions, and that weird, silly solution actually wound up having a really big impact. Okay? Step number 4. Evaluate possible solutions. It's where you take all your solutions and go, okay, this one's just not going to work. The laws of physics, and I've had that happen before. The laws of physics just don't work for this one. Okay, good point. We don't have the computer networks available to do this one, so we'll throw that one out. And you begin to winnow down to a smaller number of solutions, hopefully driving toward 1 or 2 primary solutions you want to look. And a lot of times in this evaluating possible solutions, you wind up combining them. Somebody had a piece of one piece over here, somebody had another piece over here, and when you put them together, that's your best solution. Okay? And the 5th step, implement and assess. Okay? Now, a lot of people say you just implement the solution and then you're done. Everybody have a good day. We've implemented the solution. We're through. No, you have to go back and check and see that your solution is actually achieving your end state, your goal. Okay? And I have seen leadership books when they talk about problem solving, the last one is implementation of the solution. No, there's a possibility that you will implement, and when you assess, you realize you analyzed the problem wrong and you have to go back to step number 2. A lot of times you will find when you do assessment that you define the problem wrong and you have to go all the way back to step number 1. Okay? Now, there are a lot of places, and some leadership manuals will show this as a cycle. You define the problem, you analyze the problem, you generate solutions, you evaluate the possible solutions, you implement and assess the solution, and that leads you to defining whatever new problem has presented itself through solving the old problem. Okay, so we take something recent. We thought that the problem in getting everybody COVID vaccinations was production. So we reached out to all the major producers and we've implemented programs to increase their production. Okay, we define the problem. We analyzed the problem. We generated solutions. We determined that the best way to solve it is to, through legal means, force all the manufacturers to work together to increase our production of vaccines. And we implement that solution. Well, when we go back and we assess that solution, we realize we really haven't increased that many people getting shots in their arms. So we now have to redefine the problem. We've solved quantity. Now we have to get to the next part. Oh, it's transportation is the next problem we have to solve. So we define the problem as transportation. We realize that we're dealing with 51 state health departments instead of one big national problem. So we have to generate a solution by which we have contact with all the states and the District of Columbia to get the vaccines to them so that they can evaluate, and we evaluate the possible solutions. We select one. We're going to set up a database where everybody can go in and look and see what vaccines they're going to be getting next. So the states have the information so they can run their programs. We implement that and then we assess. And then we now have another problem to solve. Okay, well, the problem, now that we're getting shots in people, how do we have a national data? How do we know whether or not someone's had been vaccinated yet? Okay, and then we analyze that problem. Well, how will we know what do we really need? Well, if you're getting on an airplane, you need to be able to prove to the airline you've had your shots. Okay, that gives us. We generate solutions. Well, we can have a vaccination passport. Everybody can carry their shot cards. 3 or 4 different things. And each solution just identifies the next series of problems. Okay, so while we've discussed this as being linear, in many cases, it's going to be a cyclical process. Okay? So, what is the leadership function in problem solving? Well, there's 4 different potential functions a leader can have. It's kind of like one of those number lines you used to do in geometry or whatever, some math. I hated math. Okay? And our 2 extremes are going to be, well, the first extreme is we drop the marker. So on this extreme is consensus. Consensus. And consensus is where the leader gets everybody to agree on a solution. Okay? I want everybody to be on board with this 100%. If we're not unanimous in this decision, we're not going to do it. It's that simple. Everybody's on board or we find another solution. And you see this a lot in movies. Okay, we're going to rob the bank, but we all have to be in agreement on how we're going to rob the bank or we don't rob the bank. See in a lot of war movies, we're probably all going to be killed doing this, so if not everybody agrees, we're not doing it. Okay? The other extreme is an authority rule or an authoritarian rule. Okay? That's just where the leader goes, hey, suck it up, Buttercup. I'm in charge here. You're going to do what I tell you. Where it's only important to have one person approve of the plan or the solution. So consensus is everybody has to approve of the plan. Authoritarian is only the leader has to approve of the plan. Now, in the middle, we have voting or majority rules. that's where the leader says, hey, we're not going to all come to an agreement. But let's all work on, let's take a vote and the majority wins. The other is a compromise. And that's where the leader goes, okay, listen, this is my plan. This is the one I'm adopting, but I'm willing to give you these 2 points to make you happy with this. Okay? So you go from consensus where everybody has to approve to voting where the majority rules to compromise where the leader decides, but he or she does give some latitude to the members of the group. And then there's our authoritarian rule or authority rule where the leader makes the decision and tells everybody else, hey, I don't care whether you want to do it or not. I'm the leader. I'm doing it this way. Okay? All right. That is leadership. Chapter 14. Woo woo. Okay. As always, if you have any questions, if you want any follow-ups, feel free to send me an email. I will certainly have, with enough notice, have on-campus meetings with you. Be happy to talk to you via Zoom. Just let me know how you want to meet, and I can answer any questions, or at least I'll act like I can answer any questions you may have. But until then, hey, everybody stay safe, and we will see you soon.